Not all of the actors from Everybody Loves Raymond remained for the whole run, and no one was pleased about these departures, even though the show was immensely popular and had a beloved cast. For both professional and personal reasons, some of them decided to leave the show. Some people were driven by different reasons, similar to handling scheduling difficulties or seeking out new possibilities. Nonetheless, why would an integral aspect of something massively popular just up and disappear? The show was one of the most watched comedy series of all time, so let's see if we can figure out why some of the actors left. Rosalind Doris. Fans around the world felt like they were bidding farewell to a second family as the 2005 season of Everybody Loves Raymond ended, following 9 humorous and touching seasons. The Baroness had integrated into our life, much like that boisterous, flawed, but endearing extended family. Doris Roberts gave a superb performance as Marie Barone, the archetypal controlling mother, who was the focal point of all that mayhem. Her caustic tongue, intrusive tactics, and unexpected displays of profound love were rather surprising. Marie left a lasting impression. Many viewers anticipated Doris's return to television shortly after the episode concluded. However, that failed to materialize significantly, leaving many to question why. The first thing you need to know is that unlike other actors, Doris Roberts didn't just quit the program. There was no disintegration or departure of cast members from Everybody Loves Raymond. The show concluded on a high note since the whole ensemble was still there, performing with the same infectious chemistry that had hooked viewers in the first place. Actually, the show's makers decided to stop it while it was still popular. Despite the difficulty of saying farewell, everyone, including Doris, respected that decision. Parting ways after nearly a decade wasn't easy, especially since the cast had grown like family in real life as well. Performing for Marie Barone was more than simply another acting role for Doris. In an interview she gave a while back, she mentioned how much she related to Marie. Layers of Marie. While she had her unpleasant moments, she also had intense loves, was proud of herself, and could be vulnerable. The audience could feel the genuine emotion that Doris gave to the role. In the eyes of the public, she and Marie eventually blended into one. The good and bad sides of developing such an emotional investment in a fictional figure are debatable. It is, in a sense, a tremendous achievement. However, it can make progress seem like a huge uphill battle. Doris had a hard time settling into a new role that she believed was just as fulfilling or significant. A major factor in her reluctance to take on more television roles was that Doris was very picky. She longed for independence after 9 years of hard work on a popular comedy. She had no interest in being relegated to the conventional role of an elderly woman or playing the part of just another mother-in-law. Her acting chops were top-notch, and she despised being confined. She redirected her focus elsewhere, refusing to take on tasks that failed to thrill her or work on projects just for financial gain. On the other hand, that was really rather remarkable. Following her time with Raymond, Doris Roberts went back to her theatrical roots, which she had always loved. Even before she became famous, she had a substantial background in stage performance. It was satisfying for her creatively, and it gave her the opportunity to grow in ways that her comedic acting roles on TV didn't always provide. Aside from that, she ramped up her writing, drawing on her extensive profession to share stories and thoughts. The memoir she wrote and published was titled, "Are You Hungry, Dear?", in which she candidly discussed her life, including her experiences on Everybody Loves Raymond as well as her challenges, successes, and more. Moreover, Doris stepped up her involvement in activism and philanthropy, particularly about matters impacting Hollywood's senior actors. Because she had personally encountered ageism in the entertainment business, she spoke out against it. She advocated for greater recognition of veteran actors and wanted to see them given more opportunities to perform. She utilized her voice and platform to make a difference through that kind of work, even though it wasn't as glamorous as her TV performances. She certainly didn't vanish entirely from our screens. Some of her guest appearances on television shows include Hot in Cleveland, The Middle, Law and Order, SVU, and SVU. It was primarily her decision not to take on another major long-term TV role. Marie Barone was the pinnacle of all things for Doris. It wasn't that she couldn't play other parts. It was just that her previous work was so groundbreaking that it was difficult to surpass. Doris Roberts enjoyed a more sedate but very rewarding life following Everybody Loves Raymond. She maintained a modest acting role, performed on stage, wrote, campaigned, and cherished time with her loved ones. When she died in 2016, it was a devastating blow to her legion of fans. However, her legacy is truly remarkable. In addition to her iconic role as Marie Baron, she was a groundbreaking actress who had a huge heart, a wicked sense of humor, and a long list of impressive roles. There was no common rationale for the second name to stay. Actually, it was a very touching farewell for all of the cast members. Boyle, Peter. In contrast to other actors, Everybody Loves Raymond's Frank Barone, played by Peter Boyle, did not formally depart from the program. From the first episode in 1996 till the last one in 2005, he was there. However, his untimely death in 2006, not long after the series concluded, makes it seem like he was cut too short. To some extent, he did. The usual way of leaving the performance is not the case, though. A manner. Fans felt like they lost a member of the Barone family when he left the Earth a year after the finale aired. One of the most memorable characters on the program, thanks to his deadpan delivery, quick wit, and delightfully inappropriate statements in his role as Frank. Something became apparent to viewers in the most recent 2 seasons. Frank, played by Peter, appeared to have less screen time or be more of a supporting character than he had previously. Much conjecture ensued as a result of this. There was a lot of speculation about whether Peter had chosen to play a smaller role or if other characters were getting greater screen time. Behind the scenes, Peter was actually handling a lot of things. Even in the early seasons, he had been battling health problems. In the 1990s, he had a heart attack and later fought cancer. Additionally, he suffered a stroke shortly after the program aired. These were major concerns. Conditions like these may have been fatal if left untreated. Still, Peter kept everything under wraps. He was an expert in every way. He consistently showed up to work, memorized his lines, and gave Frank Barone performances that audiences will never forget. Peter persevered through his health problems and continued hosting the show. He had no intention of being written off. Except in cases of dire need, he never slowed down. His level of commitment reveals a lot about his character. Being a member of Everybody Loves Raymond was something he truly enjoyed. He considered the entire cast and crew more than just colleagues. A second family was formed by them. Just by seeing cast reunions and behind-the-scenes interviews, you can tell. There was an exceptional quality to that assembly. In the midst of Ray Romano, Doris Roberts, Patricia Heaton, and Brad Garrett's extremely close-knit group, Peter stood squarely in the center. This was no ordinary acting role for him. He felt completely at ease there. Indeed, anecdotes from the set attest to the fact that Peter amused the crew in the time between shots. His humor reflected his character, dry and sardonic. However, he was also exceedingly kind and considerate. Colleagues attest that he consistently delivered 110% effort, regardless of whether he was physically or mentally well. Once the cameras started rolling, he gave it his all, even though he might have benefited from a little more time or sleep in between sequences. Particularly from someone with his level of professional achievement, such kind of enthusiasm is unusual. Peter had already established himself with prominent roles in both comedic and dramatic roles prior to Raymond. In Young Frankenstein, he portrayed the monster. He was nominated for multiple Emmys for his work, including his appearance in Taxi Driver. By the time Everybody Loves Raymond rolled around, he could have relaxed, but he chose not to. He poured himself into playing Frank, and it was successful. His fame spread far and wide into the lives of viewers of the next generation. To top it all off, he pulled it off by portraying a television dad who was both cranky and hilariously direct. It was a conscious decision to discontinue Everybody Loves Raymond in 2005. It was a fitting finale for the show. Instead of dragging it out to keep the show on the air, the creators and actors believed it was the perfect moment. Both the decision and the farewell included Peter. No one made a grand exit, and nothing interesting happened off-screen. It was just the finale of a beloved series with all of the major players remaining. Peter tragically died of multiple myeloma and heart disease less than 2 years after that. A 71-year-old man, he was. The cast felt the impact of his death. Ray Romano has opened up about the pain of losing Peter so quickly after the program finished. At his funeral, the entire cast reassembled, and they all agreed that working with the wonderful people and, most importantly, Peter, on Everybody Loves Raymond was an unforgettable experience. For what reasons did Peter Boyle depart from Everybody Loves Raymond? He didn't, in fact. He persisted right up until the final episode. Even though he was sick and becoming older, he never let that stop him until it was absolutely necessary. It felt like such a sudden loss because he left the earth not long after the event concluded. However, he devoted himself fully to the character to the very end. And that is the reason why Frank Barone's legacy continues. Many of his admirers recall his stern wisdom, quote him, and giggle at his remarks. Peter Boyle may be physically gone, but he is certainly not forgotten on screen. Sweeten, Madeline. Madeline Sweeten was well known to viewers of Everybody Loves Raymond for her role as Ollie Barone. She was the oldest of the Barone children, and her lovely and occasionally sardonic charisma shone through in the part. Despite sharing the stage with such comic greats as Doris Roberts, Ray Romano, and Patricia Heaton, she began the program at the tender age of 5 and continued until she was a teenager, a full 9 years later. She had an extraordinary upbringing on set for about 10 years. Madeline didn't immediately seek out additional sitcoms or major Hollywood parts once the show ended in 2005. Rather, she performed something that kid actors rarely do. Retrenchment engulfed her. Being a part of a popular TV show can have both benefits and drawbacks, particularly when you begin at such a young age. Although it brings fame and fortune, it also places immense strain on you. Expectations to present oneself in a specific manner, both in appearance and behavior. All the attention and stardom that Madeline received from Everybody Loves Raymond was too much for her. Fans of the program adored her for her character, Ally, rather than for who she really is. After the show ended, she came to terms with the fact that she needed space to discover her own identity apart from her character and the sheltered Hollywood environment in which she had grown up. She didn't despise performing or wish she could quit the industry altogether. She merely required an area to exhale, to mature and gain life experience away from the prying gaze of the public. Sometimes, your childhood might be taken away from you when you're a child star. Madeline obviously wished she could have some of that time back. She opted to step away from the spotlight for a while rather than launch into another major undertaking. Being a typical young adult, she prioritized her private life and mental wellness. It is an opportunity that not many young stars receive. She returned to acting in due time, but this time she did it in a much more understated, self-reliant fashion. To alleviate the immense pressure that comes with stardom, she began to pursue voice acting and small-budget films as ways to express herself creatively. Although these efforts did not garner much attention, they allowed her to pursue her interests independently. That reveals a great deal about her personality, to be honest. Just becoming famous wasn't something she cared about. She aspired to lead a balanced life, do meaningful work, and feel good about herself. For what reason, then, did Madeline Sweeten depart from Hollywood and Everybody Loves Raymond once the show concluded? Regardless of the setback, she persisted. She decided she wanted more from life than simply stardom, so she left. Separate from the persona she had been known for, she yearned to discover who she really was. It took courage, particularly in a field that constantly encourages young actors to conform. Rather than focusing on the spotlight, she opted for inner calm. Her tale is all the more inspiring because of her decision, even though we don't see her on TV every week. Sullivan and Sawyer make it sweeter. Jeffrey and Michael Barone, those charming twins, are now etched in my memory. They were integral to the show's plot and were portrayed by Sawyer and Sullivan Sweeten, who were actually twins. They were a part of the brilliant ensemble that included Ray Romano, Patricia Heaton, and others, and together they painted an amusing and sympathetic depiction of a dysfunctional family. However, what followed the conclusion of the program? Furthermore, what caused the twins to abandon acting altogether? You have to keep in mind how young they were when the show began in order to comprehend their choice. Cast members of Everybody Loves Raymond cast Sawyer and Sullivan as infants as young as 16 months old. That is essentially infants. From that point on, they spent every waking moment of their childhood on sets, surrounded by adults in acting roles and the production staff, and lit up by the bright lights of the studio. They were completely reliant on it for almost a decade. From the outside, the lifestyle seems glamorous. A chance to walk a red carpet, become famous, and star on a hit TV show. However, children may find it extremely daunting. Instead of having a normal childhood filled with friends at school, playing football on weekends, and celebrating birthdays, they were glued to the TV, learning lines and hitting their marks. When the fifth season of Everybody Loves Raymond ended in 2005, the boys were probably around 10 years old. That's a tough age for kids in general, let alone those who spend their formative years glued to screens. Following the conclusion of the show, the boys and their family made the deliberate choice to distance themselves from the entertainment industry and resume a life away from the spotlight. They weren't exactly looking to get rich or ride the wave of celebrity. The exact reverse is true. After spending time with family in Texas, they returned to school and attempted to lead normal teenage lives. They wanted to give themselves a chance at a life outside of the intense pressures of Hollywood, and that decision was partially about safeguarding their mental health. The shift from being a child star to just being a kid may be challenging, as many former child stars will attest. This transition happened all of a sudden. Going from being a public figure and contributing to a high-profile initiative to being a faceless student in a classroom is a big change. It looked like the shift was particularly challenging for Sawyer. Sullivan maintained a low profile, but Sawyer allegedly battled melancholy and isolation in the years following the show's cancellation. He tragically took his own life in 2015 when he was just 19 years old. Fans were startled by his death, and it pushed the mental health issues that many young performers confront when the cameras stop rolling back to the forefront. Tragically, the Sweeten family's experience shows how children, particularly when they're young, react differently to celebrity than adults do. Although Jeffrey and Michael were portrayed by the public as charming and humorous members of a sitcom family, Sawyer and Sullivan were actually children dealing with genuine difficulties. They weren't rejecting success when they decided to quit the industry. The story centered on coming of age independently and discovering inner serenity. Unfortunately, Sawyer was unable to achieve it tranquilly. Meanwhile, Sullivan has managed to keep a low profile. Every now and then he'll bring up his brother and the experiences they had. On the whole, though, he has opted for seclusion. And it's hard to say that we should hold him responsible. It may be beneficial to lead a low-key life after spending so much time in the limelight as a child. Their story enriches the history of Everybody Loves Raymond with a touch of melancholy. Even while the show made millions of people happy, two little boys were dealing with a lot more challenging reality than what we saw on TV. It's a strong illustration of the fact that child actors are, essentially, children. That leaving can be the bravest thing they can do at times. Hello, my name is Chris Elliott. As Amy's eccentric brother Peter McDougal, Chris Elliott had a notable cameo appearance on Everybody Loves Raymond. He added a new dimension of eccentricity and social awkwardness to the dynamic of the Barone family through his character. Peter became a fan favorite despite his limited appearances since he was absolutely hilariously offbeat. However, he vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. What transpired is a mystery to many fans. Explain Chris Elliott's departure from the program. The shocking part is that the response isn't really dramatic. There was no controversy, creative disagreements, or quarrel happening behind the scenes. Chris Elliott's already busy schedule and scheduling issues were the main factors. Elliott, in contrast to many performers, has never been content to settle into a single, steady part. He was quite multi-talented, working as an actor, writer, and comedian simultaneously. While performing on Everybody Loves Raymond was entertaining, it wasn't his primary endeavor at the moment. Elliott has been a fixture in the television comedy industry for quite some time, having first gained fame on Late Night with David Letterman for his eccentric antics and quirky personas. He has a long history of television writing, parts in cult comedies like Cabin Boy, and guest appearances on shows like Schitt's Creek, where he played the character of the lovable Chris. Therefore, Raymond was more of an afterthought, as opposed to a longer-term pledge. His appearances were fun and spiced up the show, but he was never supposed to stay. There were other matters that needed Elliott's attention, so he departed. I had no problem wanting to go on the show. Time and priorities were the only determining factors. He appeared out of nowhere, masterfully awkwardly portrayed Peter, and then went on to the next creative task, making everyone giggle. In all candor, that is one of the many appealing aspects of his line of work. Constantly changing, constantly surprising. Fans may have wished for more Peter McDougal, but his brief but memorable tenure helped the character stand out. When the name Katherine Hellman came up, it was one of those recognizable faces that radiated sophistication and grace. She was Lois Whalen on Everybody Loves Raymond, the mother of Deborah, who was both cultured and delightfully snooty. She didn't appear in many episodes, but the ones she did make a big splash. Her absence in later seasons was clearly noticeable to fans, and many pondered why she didn't return more frequently. Actually, there was no drama or tension behind the scenes that caused her to leave. It had its origins in her personal decisions and was really rather straightforward. Actress Katherine Hellman had already established herself as a legend in her field when she played Lois. Soap and Who's the Boss were two of her most famous roles. Additionally, she had solidified her position in television history. She had no intention of reviving her acting career when she signed on with Everybody Loves Raymond. She actually chose her projects carefully and was semi-retired. At that stage in her life, acting wasn't her primary emphasis, but it was still something she liked. Katherine wanted to take a break from the limelight for a while and focus on her personal life, spending time with loved ones, traveling, and generally relaxing. The monotony of conventional TV job, with its rigorous scheduling and long hours, no longer piqued her interest. She deserved to take her time and decide when and how she worked. She chose to make infrequent appearances instead of committing to a regular role on the show. She had full appreciation from the show's producers and actors for her choice. No matter the circumstances, they were always grateful to have her on board, and her sequences were meticulously planned to maximize her time. There was no one who wanted her gone, thus her minimal role was intentional. It merely mirrored her current professional and personal situation. She had no artistic differences or feelings of irritation that led her to leave the show. She just wanted to chill out and do her own thing. In all candor, I think the majority of people can appreciate that. Whenever Katherine Hellman made an appearance, she brought her trademark wit and elegance to the performance. Her performances were memorable to viewers even though she didn't appear in every episode. Reasons why Raymond is adored by all. For what reasons did it win the hearts of so many people? Everything that makes Everybody Loves Raymond tick revolves around something incredibly basic, yet profound. Loving ones. Sports journalist Ray Barone resides in a house across the street from his parents, Marie and Frank, and the show centers on him. To include Robert, his elder brother. For a lot of people, this situation doesn't seem genuine. Everyone has had parents or siblings who were a touch too persistent or who knew exactly how to annoy them. Despite the incessant squabbling, teasing, and frequent butting heads, the family is bound together by an unbreakable relationship. The sincerity with which the familial dynamics were portrayed made this sympathetic. Everybody Loves Raymond avoided the implausibility of certain other comedies by maintaining a grounded plot and cast. It was not uncommon for Robert's jealousy of Ray's family life, Frank's harshness, or Marie's domineering methods to serve as the source of humor. What it's like to have relatives nearby was well depicted in the show. Everything from the terrible to the humorous. The show's widespread appeal stems from its exploration of the universally relatable complexities of familial love. Without rarely coming across as overly campy, the writing on Everybody Loves Raymond was intelligent and engaging. The humor was as genuine as it was dry and occasionally caustic. When dealing with familial issues, Ray's character would often deliver deadpan quips that summed up the frustration perfectly. The supporting cast, including Ray's wife Deborah, his parents Marie and Frank, and brother Robert, were all brilliantly realized and contributed their unique brand of humor. The show's unique selling point was that it went beyond simple jokes. Underneath the humor, there was genuine emotion. The writing and acting conveyed moments of sincere love, anger, and comprehension. A major factor that made the play stand out was its manageable blend of comedic timing and heartfelt compassion. You experienced both the humor and the gravity of familial bonds. Complex, flawed, and incredibly loving. The ensemble cast of Raymond is a major factor in the show's success. Ray Romano possessed an endearing charisma that brought joy to everyone's face. Acting as the person who is simply trying to keep his sanity while dealing with family and life in general. Deborah, portrayed by Patricia Heaton, provided an ideal foil. She was likable and practical, but her own eccentricities and annoyances made her incredibly authentic. The parents came next. The role of the controlling mother, played by Doris Roberts as Marie Barone, was a textbook example. Who is irresistible? The stern, no-nonsense dad with his soft spots was played by Peter Boyle as Frank. Robert, played by Brad Garrett, possessed an endearing blend of enviousy, insecurity, and kindness. These actors had incredible chemistry, which made the family feel real and lived in instead of staged. The show's actors had such great chemistry that watching it was like listening in on an actual family's arguments and discussions, rather than a produced sitcom. A lot of people were drawn to it because of the natural flow. The 1996 premiere of Everybody Loves Raymond occurred during a golden age of family comedy that dealt with commonplace, realistic situations. Its understatement and clarity were its defining features. The show stuck to its tried-and-true formula while other shows went for grandiose spectacles. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, when everyone was so busy, it was nice to have a TV show that could let you laugh at your problems and relax at the same time. It was well-timed for that cultural moment because of the show's sympathetic depiction of family life and its mild humor. They weren't going for shock value or outrageousness. Regarding family, it was simply forthright and humorous. And the people wanted it that way. It continued to reach new audiences and retain old ones via streaming and replays. The show's characters and plots came to symbolize, in popular culture, the ideals of a traditional family comedy. If your pals are looking for a funny and touching program to binge, it's still a good choice. The script and acting are so good that the show is entertaining and relevant even now. Something about family is eternal, and the show showed that. You can enjoy the anarchy, romance, and humor regardless of the decade you're viewing it in. Well, the video has come to a close. Feel free to share your views and opinions in the space provided. In order to receive future uploads, please subscribe.